Hi guys, my name is Hannah and I'm a cheerleader at MHS and I'm also a dancer.
And my name is Rachel, and I'm a cheerleader at MHS as well.
And today we're going to be teaching you about tortoises and their shells.
Okay, so to start off, I know we're obviously like not together, but I want you guys to take a second to just think about what you think is the difference between a turtle and a tortoise. And obviously, you can look at the screen and look at the pictures as a hint. So just take a second and think. Okay, so now that you've taken a second, so the difference between a turtle and a tortoise is that a turtle lives on land and a turtle lives in water and a tortoise lives on land. Sorry. It's been a long break. So all tortoises are turtles, but turtles are not tortoises. So if you want to think about how squares are rectangles, but rectangles aren't squares, you can apply that to a turtle and a tortoise in those terms as well, if that's easier for you.
Okay, so now that we know the difference between turtles and tortoises, some tortoise facts are that a group of tortoises are called a creep. So if you and your classroom were all together, you guys would be called a creep. And then tortoises can't swim, but they can hold their breath for a super long time. So we're going to try to see how long you can hold your breath for. Ready? Go. Okay, you beat us, so you can stop. We don't want you acting out during our presentation, so go ahead and breathe. Also, their shells are sensitive to touch, so if you feel your hands, you have a thing called nerves in your hands that allow you to feel that. So even though their shells are super hard, like your desks, they can still feel that. And they also smell with their throats. I want you to think of another reptile that smells with something other than their nose. I'll give you a second. So if you thought of a snake, you were right. Snakes smell with their tongues.
Okay, and so a little bit about their shells. So if you look at this picture like of their shell, like that's like an actual picture of a tortoise shell. So the lighter their shell color, the warmer their region they're from. And region's just like a super fancy word for like the place that they're from. So if you want to think about our region, you could say Manhattan. Or if you want to think even bigger than that, you could say Kansas. Or if you want to think on an even bigger scale, you could say like the United States is our region. So a region, again, is just like a place that someone is from. And so on a tortoise, they actually have an exoskeleton and an endoskeleton. Now, those are really big, fancy words. So first, I'm going to tell you what an exoskeleton is. So an exoskeleton is their bones, but on the outside of their bodies. And their endoskeleton is their bones or their skeleton, but on the inside of their body. I want you guys to remember that because we're going to get into those two things here on the next few slides. But so on the tortoise's exoskeleton or its shell, there are these things called scutes, and they're like little scales. So if you look on this picture, yeah, like Hannah is moving the mouse over, those are all the little scales, and they're all called scutes.
Okay, so I want you to think for a second and remember what an exoskeleton is. I'll give you a little bit. So an exoskeleton is the outer bones, and this provides support and protection for the majority of their body. So if you want to think of the square that you have on your body, not including your arms and your legs. And it also acts like a raincoat to keep them from getting too wet or drying out. So depending on where they live, like a rainforest or the desert.
Okay, now I want you to think for a second on what the endoskeleton was. Okay, so the endoskeleton was its inner bones, and so what those do is it provides structure and support and protection for all of our internal or inside organs, so like our lungs, our heart, things like that. So everything on the inside, that's what protects us. And then for like the structure and support, it's also what makes us able to stand up and everything. So if we didn't have our endoskeleton, we wouldn't be able to stand up. We would just be like a big blob of just like skin. But our bones, our endoskeleton, is what makes us able to move and stand up and stuff like that. And so in a tortoise, they have two types of bones in their endoskeleton. One is called the limb bone, and then the other one is its vertebrae and skull. So limb is their arms and legs, and so we have limbs too. Our limbs are our arms and legs too. So if you guys want to look around for a second and stop. So you guys just use your limb bones, your arms and your legs. And then their vertebrae and their skull, we also have that too. So the vertebrae is its spine, and it goes all the way up from their neck to their head or their skull. So if you guys lean over for a second and then move your fingers along the cross, like the middle of your back, all those little bumpy things, that's your spine or your vertebrae. And so on a tortoise, their vertebrae goes all the way up along its shell on the inside there, all the way up into its neck, and then connects to its skull. So that's its endoskeleton.
Okay, so we're going to do a little game, and I want you guys to think about your 7 continents. So I'm going to go ahead and say those with you, and if you say it with me, good job. So this one right here is North America, South America, Africa, and then on this side is Europe, and this side, this big, huge continent, is Asia. And this is Australia, and then Antarctica, which is the super, super cold place, is down here, but it got cut off. So you're going to need to remember those because we're going to be asking you some questions about those later.
Okay, so just like humans, how we all look differently, it's the same thing with tortoises. So with humans, there's different races of us, like there's different types of us, and we all look different. It's the same thing with tortoises. So we're going to talk to you about the 3 most common types of tortoises. So the first one being the Herman tortoise. And so this one, you can see the little picture of it there. It lives in moist climates during the spring and fall and dry in the summer. And so climate is just like a fancy word for the weather. So a moist climate would be like where it's really rainy or really foggy, stuff like that. And so those places would be like Spain and Italy. Those are like the countries that you would find the Herman tortoise in. And I want you to remember those 2 countries because in the next slide we'll be going over Spain and Italy a little bit, just so you know kind of where it's at. And so the Herman tortoise has a lifespan of at least 50 years, if not longer, just kind of depending on the environment that it lives in. And so lifespan is another tricky word. Sorry about these big words, guys. But it's a word that just means like how long you live. So our lifespan would be like 80 to even 100. But with the Herman tortoise, it would be like 50 to maybe 80 or 90. Again, just depending on its environment, predators around it, the type of food that's available to it, stuff like that. And so size-wise, it would be about 18 centimeters. So if you have a ruler around, you can go ahead and like look at that ruler. So if you find 18 centimeters, it would be about that big. Obviously, it's not going to be super big. If you look at that picture, it's not super big. And then with its shell, it does have a dome-shaped shell. And so dome just means like a half circle kind of. So if you want to think of like a hill, how it goes up and over, that's a dome. So that's what its shell would look like. And the color of it would be orange and yellow. Again, just depending on the weather and the place that it's from. But the thing that all Herman tortoises have are these 2 little yellow dots on the side of its head. And those little dots are the way to differentiate a Herman tortoise versus any other type of tortoise. Okay, so I'm just going to have you guys think for a second those 2 countries that I told you to remember. Okay, so one of those countries was Spain. If you look over to your left, kind of at the bottom, it's kind of covered, but if you look at the mouse hand is moving around, that's where Spain is. It's kind of big. There you go. And then the other one was Italy, which is over to the right of it. So those are those 2 main areas that the Herman tortoise is from.
Okay, so the next type of tortoise is a Russian tortoise, and these are found in Asia, and Asia is a continent. So it's found in the country of Russia, which is found, and that the continent is Asia. And they have a lifespan of about 40 years. So like we said earlier, we as humans live to be about 80 to 100. So they have about half of our lifespan. And they can get up to about 8 to 10 inches long. So that's a little bit shorter than a foot. So once again, if you have a ruler, you can go ahead and look at that. They're probably going to be about this big. And then typically females are larger than males. And that's because females have to hold a bunch of eggs. So unlike us, where we give birth to like 1 to 2, maybe 3 babies at once, they lay eggs, and they lay up to hundreds and thousands of eggs.
The last tortoise that we're going to talk to you guys about is called the star tortoise. And this one's actually really fun. If you look at the top left corner, that's a picture of one, and it's really pretty. So these tortoises come from India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. And I want you to remember those 3 countries again, because we'll kind of show you where they are. And so again, like Hannah said in the last slide, the females will be bigger than the males. So if you want to look at a ruler again, the females will be about 15 inches, which is a couple inches longer than a ruler. So if you want to think of a foot and then like a few more inches longer, that's how big like the females would be. So kind of big. And then the males would only reach about 9 inches. So if you want to take a look on that ruler, it's going to be shorter than a foot, maybe about here. So smaller than the female, but still a decent size. And so they can live to be between 30 years and 80 years. So still shorter than us. If you want to think of like your parents or even like your grandparents, that's how long the tortoise would live. And then what makes this tortoise really fun is that it has a black shell with all these little yellow lines going around it that kind of look like a star or like a sun. And that's actually where the tortoise gets its name, the star tortoise, is from its shell, because all those little lines look like stars. Okay, and then I want you to think of those 3 countries, and one of them's kind of cut off there at the bottom, but we'll tell you. Okay, so the first one was Pakistan, over in the purple on the left, and then the next one was India, that super big one below it, not China, but India, the green one, and then that last one was Sri Lanka, which is smaller than the 2, and it was cut off, but yeah, it's kind of under that little black bar. But those are the 3 countries that you'd find a star tortoise from. And that continent was Asia, by the way.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to think about what a predator and prey is. I want you to think about that real quick. Okay, so a predator is an animal that naturally preys on other animals, and a prey is that predator's food, so an animal that is hunted by another animal. So for tortoises here in America, predators for tortoises are ravens, coyotes, foxes, and roadrunners. You can see those down here, ravens, foxes, roadrunners, and coyotes. And predators prey on eggs and young tortoises before their shells are fully developed. So when a tortoise is young, if you want to think about playing with slime, that's almost what their shells are like. So they're easy to penetrate or get into, whereas when they're older, their shells are fully developed and hard. So that's why predators normally prey on eggs and young tortoises before their shells are fully developed.
Okay, so how their shells like actually protect them from their predators and everything. So it's upper outer shell, which is like most of the shell that you can see on the back of that tortoise there. That's the part of the shell that protects the tortoise on a day-to-day life. So as a tortoise is just walking around, just living its life, that part of the shell is what protects it from anything that were to fall, like a bird, just something like that. That's just like the hardest part of the shell, the majority of the shell. And then the shell doesn't stop at the side of its body. The shell actually wraps around completely onto its belly. And so that undershell protects its belly. So if a tortoise is living in a desert and just like walking around and all those little rocks and everything, it keeps its belly from getting super scratched up and stuff like that. Or if the tortoise was to flip over, then its belly's still protected all the way around. And so obviously its head and its legs aren't in its shell all the time, like they're walking around, eating, stuff like that. And so all that skin that the tortoise is covered with, it's super hard and it's super rough. So with our skin, if you were to like scratch, like you can obviously feel that. And if you were to scratch hard enough, it might hurt really bad. But with a tortoise, that skin is so hard and so rough that it would take a lot for you to hurt that tortoise because its skin is just so hard. And then with its limbs and its head, it can like sink into its shell if it feels like it's in danger or if it's not safe. So if there were a predator around or they hear like a super scary noise, they can just sink into their shell and then they'll be all safe.
So this is Tilly. He's a boy. He is about 15 to 20 years old. We don't know how old he is because he belongs to our school and the program. He's a Russian tortoise, which means he's from Russia, aka Asia. Yeah, he's a little grumpy right now, but we painted his nails for Halloween. But I
Which was
promise he's
a
still.
long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So I recently found out that he actually does like carrots because before he wouldn't eat them, but now he loves them.
Oh,
And he also loves lettuce, and he likes to go on walks. So if you look at him, how he's like pretending like he's running. Yeah. So this is Tilly, and it's super sad because you guys don't get to pet him and meet him. He's super nice, even though he's grumpy right now. But yeah. So this is his outer shell, exoskeleton, and it also wraps around on his stomach. So yeah, that's all we have for you guys today. So sad we couldn't come to your classroom, but yeah.
thanks for listening, guys.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.